We need a mercy of God. We're in Romans 12, 1 and 2, talking about God's mercy in verse 1. And he continues on and says, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices. We need mercy. The problem again is we tend to crawl off the altar. Let's pretend this is an altar. This table right in front of me where my Bible's sitting on. If you have a sacrifice on the altar, and let's think back about Abraham, as I mentioned in our introductory video on Romans 12, 1 and 2. Abraham knew God would provide when he had given the command to take Isaac and offer up Isaac. He knew God was a good God who doesn't go around killing children. So he knew that God would intervene and provide either by resurrecting his son or providing another animal. All right, God did provide an animal. If you remember the story, he provided a ram that was stuck in the thicket of the bushes. A ram's horn was stuck. Abraham, God told him to stop, not to offer his son with a knife. He was going to kill his son. He says, I just know for sure that you love me and you're willing to obey me. I want your son to be fine. Unbounds his son, gets the animal, puts the animal on the altar. What happens when an altar is lit underneath with a wood? If you got a sacrifice and a burnt offering, it has to be burnt, which means you got to have wood or some type of heat underneath the altar. So if the table right here is the altar, you got to have something underneath it providing the heat. And that's what happens as Christians. What happens, we get stuck and we get into hot situations, either off bad choices in our life or good choices we made as we're seeking God, but God's wanting to test us. He's wanting to develop us. The problem is when it gets hot and heat, there's a statement that's used often in America, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Well, if you can't stand the heat, stay on the altar if you love Jesus. But what happens, most of us don't want to do that, so we crawl off the altar and we avoid being a living sacrifice to please our Father. Be back with you next time as we continue on through 1 and 2.